before it uploads, but I'll let you know about that. Okay, hello and hope you're well. I'm Abdullah Adekola. Welcome back to Work in Progress. This is a show where I have conversations with interesting people about something they're working on personally or creatively. The hope is that we can learn from each other and grow together. You can follow the show on Instagram, Working Prog Pod Addy. So, who am I? I'm a Black and British writer and performer based in Leeds, UK. My breakthrough collection of poetry is called Migressence and comes out in the UK with Burning Eye Books in September 2021. My collection will also be on our website, adekola.bigcartel.com, and you can follow me on Instagram at Adekola Poetry. Today, joining me is Brown Girl in the Ring. Brown Girl in the Ring is a Birmingham-based writer and spoken word artist. UK-born, she identifies as a Malawian Indian Muslim, and her love for playful wordplay includes themes of survival, healing, identity, spirituality, sensuality, nature, and music. A spirit-tugging creative healer, she uses poetry to articulate when her lips don't know where to start. And you can follow her on Instagram, /Brown Girl in the Ring. That's BRWNGIRLINTHERING. So Brown Girl in the Ring, okay? Just with the Brown, BRWN. Okay, so yeah, thanks for joining me today. How are you doing today? How are you doing this morning?
I'm really well, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm a bit more of an owl than a lark, so this is a little early for me on a Sunday, but it's nice. It's nice to be chatting today. So.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I appreciate it. Night owl. I think owl is actually one of my favorite animals.
Really?
Because also owl's a symbol of Leeds. There's also on Leeds City Council. There's which obviously I grew up in Leeds, and so that's where I'd say I'm from. And also and obviously it's like they must be wise and all these kind of thing. But yeah, so they've got good PR owls, but meanwhile they're like predators, aren't they? They're a bird of prey, and they'll snatch up an animal anytime, given a chance. But yeah, I think a wise owl.
I do love owls actually. Like
Yeah.
I've actually had a few owl experiences where I've carried them and stuff. I find them beautiful creatures. So, yes.
Okay, fab. Okay, so you are a writer and spoken word artist yourself. You're also active in your community. So just tell me a bit about what inspires you to write and perform, and how did you get started with that?
Yeah, I was thinking about like how to answer that if you ask me what inspires me, and it's really interesting. I suppose I don't sort of sit down to write. I really feel like when the words come through me, then I write. So there was a real period where I was almost writing like once a week, and that was back in 2019 before the pandemic. And I've been in a real it's been, I suppose, a creative pause for a lot of the period of the pandemic. But I guess where it all started was I guess like when I was younger, I was really creative, and I did used to write a bit of poetry, and I love sketching. And then in my 20s, I kind of just forgot that, completely forgot that part of me. And it's really a few years ago now. I went through quite a really difficult time. And poetry was the only way I could explain what was happening to me. And that's really where it started for me. So it was a really dark period, and the only way I could articulate, like I said in that, I suppose in the intro, was actually with this poem, and that poem actually became my power. And I was sharing that with family and friends and other support people at the time as well. And it kind of started from there. And from that moment, I knew that there was something in me. There was one thing about actually the power of speaking to each other and how that can help us with our mental health and how we can really connect by sharing our stories. And I knew at that point that when I felt strong enough and able enough, I really wanted to share my story. And also I was able to speak up because someone else was talking about what had happened to them. And that gave me a realization that actually something similar was really happening to me, and that was where I really got the strength to, or really, I suppose, the thought process to view things in a different way. And then from that moment, that poem really was the beginning of my writing time. So I kind of spent a lot of time on myself, and I spent a lot of healing time, and in that period, like really, I suppose, rediscovering a lot about myself. And there's a quote from Brené Brown that I always really hold close, and she says, "Abuse, anxiety, and depression thrive on silence and shame." And that thing around silence and shame, I think, is, and particularly culturally as well, there's something really something that happens where people don't want to talk about things, and actually it's so important from a mental health perspective that we do. So I suppose it came from that place, and it came from a place of survival. And throughout that period, so that was 2017, and I guess I've been on this journey, I suppose, of discovering all of the things that I love. So music, and absolutely getting lost in music, and that really inspires me. And I love to, I personally love to burn agarbatti, so incense, and sage. And I actually find there was a period where I was lying on the floor and just watching the agarbatti like float off, and that would take me somewhere, and then the words would just flow. And so I'd be in that flow state, and that really, I think that kind of connection. And then with my own faith, my Muslim faith, and but also looking back in my history, we've been able to trace back to when we were Hindu in the 1500s through to converting to Islam in the 1500s and then later. And so exploring that part of me as well, and thinking about the divine feminine and the goddess space, and all of that has been a real part of, I suppose, my journey in terms of the writing that I do now. So yeah, I think playful and some of that comes through as well. But I suppose those are some of the things that influence me, like in this moment.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thanks for sharing. You talked about kind of coming back to writing in terms of a way to kind of process what things that you've been going through, having been inspired by seeing other people who are telling their story and realizing that there's some connections to what's happening to you, and then looking at culture and faith and your history of your personal family history and how that inspires you. I think that's really beautiful. I think there's I think you made an interesting point as well about just shame and things like that. I think it's in terms of things that we've experienced, the difficulties. I think especially being able to talk about them, it kind of takes away some of the power, especially at a period of time when we feel able to. It takes away some of the power, and it kind of, and the stigma, and it makes it more manageable for ourselves, and also lets other people know that this is something that people go through and that can be overcome, and this is my experience of it. So I really resonate. I really appreciate that. My kind of thing was so I was it was around 2015 when I first started kind of, or let's say 2015, early 2016 I first kind of performed. And it was, growing up, I always read a lot of books, and was an avid reader, and just, but by the time you've gone through the education system, GCSE, A-level, and then studying, my first degree was in science and all that. So you'd less and less time for reading for pleasure and all these kind of things. So I just came to a point where I was really low, wasn't really happy with just how things were going. And I kind of made a conscious decision that I need to do more things that I enjoy, and then I saw a friend doing poetry, spoken word, and I thought, well, this looks like something. I'll give it a try sometime. I was able to give it a try, and it was really supportive kind of reaction, and then I thought, okay, yeah, maybe I'll do this for a bit, and then I'll you know was able to through that I was able to meet really nice people, and meet different creative people, musicians, and writers and different things, and I thought, okay, and then like one thing led to another, and just kept on doing it, and yeah, and throughout, and now with the confidence gained from that, I mean, I don't know where one starts and or begins, but with the confidence gained from that, I was able to now working for like a mental health charity. I work for a mental health charity, and I do a lot of writing and performing. So I think it was the fact that, and also as well, it just made me more open-minded person now. When you're sitting there, at an open mic, for sure, someone gets on stage and they share their experience, about race or class or sexuality or this or mental health issues or disability or anything that they're going through. You're holding space for them, listening to them, and sometimes their life experience is totally different from yours, but often they'll be but you just appreciate that they're standing up and kind of sharing their story, sharing their experiences, and you oftentimes you feel like closer to, you feel like you hear some things about from people from first time in like when they're performing, then you might be friends with them for 5 years, and then but you never you won't never necessarily see that side of them or see what makes them tick or what's on their mind that they feel like they need to bring to a so yeah, it's a very interesting kind of experience, really, and now and then now I've been able to now so like I'm obviously with the pandemic, and it it really took especially in the first half of it, I wasn't in his mind to create. I wasn't in there's a lot of anxiety around things like that, but now more recently I've kind of felt I've kind of felt more inspired, and obviously with things opening up, feel able to kind of get out there again. But still, I feel like I'm just getting started. Really, still enjoying it, still learning, and still trying to share what I think is we share what I think, and my it's a lot of it is things that are on my mind. So a lot of it are things about identity, blackness, and just and also beyond even beyond trying to look at what kind of lessons and what kind of lives that people my ancestors lived even before before colonization, before European colonization, even before contact with with Muslims. My family's Muslim, my family's Muslim, and I think it was my great grandfather that was he was the one that so it's a lot more recent. So he was the one that first embraced Islam in Nigeria. And so so just learning and expressing and just and kind of understanding what we just understanding yourself, understanding the world. So it's been really it's been really useful in that regard for me. It's been really medium, and I think it will lead to like from there, from poetry, I can maybe delve into maybe music or make a film or whatever. But it's a very good it's a very good entryway, and it's been in terms of understanding yourself and trying to understand yourself, trying to understand the world, and sharing your experience. So I can really resonate with that.
Absolutely, and I think there's something about like the making sense of the world, and I guess as writers, we are really fortunate to be able to have this outlet to be able to articulate. And I don't know if you've ever had this, but there's sometimes where I've almost felt a bit like quite embarrassed about like who's going to be interested in this, and then I decide to be brave and put it out of my social, and someone messages back and said, like, someone I don't know, I really needed to hear this, and it's like those little moments that kind of make you go, okay. So like it's really important. Like I still remember a very, very dear friend of mine, incredible woman, Dion Draper. She said to me, she was also my singing teacher as well before she became a good friend, and she said to me, "Your voice is your most powerful instrument. You've been silent too long." like it was like a real turning point for me. Again, that's what triggered me to write that poem. And like I think that the power of choice and voice is so important in like speaking up when things feel wrong, or speaking up about what we're feeling inside. And I guess going back to your point around the work that you're doing, and also the decolonizing. I joined a collective of women last year, run by an incredible woman in the States called Dr. Rosales Meza, and it's a decolonial healing collective, specifically for women who are Black, Indigenous, and women and femmes of colour, to do decolonial healing. But what I found really incredible about this space, and actually a lot of time I don't have the headspace to go into it, so that's another interesting dynamic, but she describes it as for people who are too spiritual for the decolonial world and too decolonial for the spiritual world. And I think that there is something about going back to source and connecting to self, and that unlearning process where you absolutely have to do both those things if you are if you are spiritually inclined, of course. And I think that so I suppose that kind of the thing that we see, and I've written about this as well, where we have there's a lot of conversations around that kind of new age positivity and how toxic that is without understanding or allowing space for the other, the other ways that we might be being and feeling, and all emotions are valid and okay. And I think some of my writing has also been going through that kind of those moments of realization where, as across the world, we have all taken on white supremacy in some way. And there's that unlearning process, and part of that acknowledgement is that whoever we are, we have absorbed that in some way because of the world. And so for me, like, I found meditation and more recently yoga, and just this real kind of, I don't know if you have this, but it's almost like this real conflicted thing where actually, if it hadn't been sold to me in that kind of sanitized Western way, I probably wouldn't have noticed it. But actually then when you start going deeper, and actually this was ours, this was how our people existed. And so that kind of double layer, there's I don't know about you, maybe this is a creative thing, but there's a lot of overthinking that happens all the time. And so like, as you go through that process, I think there's something really interesting in that, in kind of what resonates with you and how you connect to that source. And for me personally, a lot of it's around ritual. And I really value that in terms of how I operate, and how, and ritual obviously doesn't replace what's here, but it absolutely, for me, helps me to reconnect in that way. And also with our divine feminine, our ability to create is, it's kind of front and center. And something else that kind of learning through this process is just the kind of the disconnection that we've experienced from our bodies and our lands, and kind of relearning to connect with our intuition and accept that as important as academic knowledge, for example, and or more so, just that kind of the knowledge and the knowing, but making time for the stillness to feel it. That's something else that I'm really kind of interested in, I suppose.
Well, you made a lot of interesting points, and I want to touch on a little bit more. Decolonization and spirituality. These are things that these are words that are really popular in the zeitgeist at the moment. Decolonization, and there's obviously books, and there's old theories and old things that are out there about them, and the spirituality. What does it mean? In fact, I think at work, at the moment we want to do a bit of taste of spirituality and faith, spirituality, and mental health kind of want to do a focus group because we're thinking of maybe offering some peer support sessions in that, and some popular discussions around that. Okay, what does faith mean to people? What does spirituality mean? And all these, and how do we kind of, what's the good way to present that while still keeping, within the secular values of, non-judgmental and so on and so forth.
Mm.
And I think, and it's so it's something even in more. Even in the mental health settings, it seems like people are starting to think about. For me, this is it's a very interesting one. For me, I kind of, this is the next area I want to explore, definitely spirituality, because a lot of times, obviously, because of the critical race theory, decolonial theory, and these concepts, it gives you useful tools to critique, a lot of the positive, like for example, positive psychology, or even more so, or new age, like holistic kind of spirituality. A lot of it, when you step back, you see, okay, well, this is a lot of privileged white women who are just who are saying, just love and light and healing, and they're using the odd Hindu word, the odd Buddhist word, they're doing yoga, they're doing this, they're doing that, and they're saying, they're just saying, manifest this, manifest that, they're even, some of them are even a bit, not that I'm pro-science or anti-science, but some of them are they're saying that, if you just heal or whatever, maybe, don't really follow science, don't take the vaccine, for example. I don't know what your stance is, whether you take it or not, but this is not really it's not really their remit to say. And you just look at it and you just think about you. And for me, and I look at it and I'm like, oh, there's something's not quite not adding up, because as someone who, so I was as somebody who's obviously I'm Muslim. I've been in, I've seen a lot of different ways that people practice their faith, and I've been, and so on and so forth. So I'm very sensitive to the idea of, and I'm also somebody who's trying to be more critical. When you turn that, and I'm a man, I'm a male as well. So the point I'm trying to say is that very sensitive to the fact that, because of what I've seen when I've been at uni and other settings, is that a lot of times people use religion as a tool of domination and coercion and so on, and it's about that's really so they're not really so interested in the spiritual side of connecting with connecting with the divine, the creator, etc. It's more about, okay, this is which I understand as well. This is my identity. This is what we do things, and this is what expectations of other people, especially women. So I'm always on the lookout for cultish behavior, and as far as I'll be honest, any white person that wants to tell me anything about life, or not white person or white big organization, if they're not even acknowledging the 500 years of European colonization, if there's not an appreciation or understanding of that, I'm going to take anything they say with a pinch of salt. Whether they're a new age spiritual person, whether they are some kind of self-help guru, whether they're from the right wing, pick up yourself by the bootstraps. My parents moved to America, and they came on the island, and now they're millionaires, and you can, why are you black people need to do the same, or whether it's so anytime anyone kind of mentions that, and they don't really acknowledge that that actually that like you said, white supremacy is something that's been a defining order of the world for a lot of years. That anti-blackness, racism, these are things that have been, the world has been foundational to the world of how it is for a lot of years. Anyone that doesn't really acknowledge that, I'm very skeptical of. I'm like, okay, how really, how did they really get it? What's going on? And then and it's tricky though, because obviously now that you've when you go down that critical analytical route, it's like, now when I turn that lens onto my own faith, I'm like, okay, I'm sort of on my own faith and my own understanding. I'm like, okay, well, what bits of my because Islam obviously it has a claims to ultimate truth and so on and so forth, and like many other religions. But I'm just interested to kind of like what bit of my spirituality and culture that was there before Islam is it resonates with me, and also as well as we as Muslims are doing a lot of they're doing a lot of reform. There's a lot of women. There's a lot of women out there, a lot of women scholars and female scholars that are really unpicking and really highlighting, like, okay, what does, what some of the assumptions and biases that we have as Muslims, a lot of them are from, for example, a lot of them are patriarchal because obviously patriarchy has been a thing for like 10,000 years or so. And so they're doing a lot of good critique and a lot, and so that's within the faith. There's a lot of interesting conversations I feel that are being had. I'm I'm hopeful and Muslim feminist and really asking certain questions that need to be asked, and I'm hopeful that our people back home as well benefit from that because I think there's so much things going on with us living in the West. Some of these feminist ideas they are good and useful and things like that, but sometimes it's a bit like okay, we are we're talking even like if you look at the hijab ban in France, it's of course it's awful, it's disgusting, but if you look at what's happening in our own countries, there's still a lot of wasted. There's still a lot that there's still a lot that ways to go in terms of for women achieving uh, actual equity and equality in terms of being able to have control over their bodies, whether they get married and so on and so forth, not having to, all these kind of things, and those things still needs to be done. So I feel like being honest, like there's a lot there's a lot of work that needs to be done in all kind of settings by all kinds of people for all kinds of different reasons. But going back to the idea of spirituality and colonization, yeah, it's something that I really want to learn. I want to work on. So, what would you say are some, kind of useful, like, kind of guiding? And I'm sorry, I'm just going on a tangent as well. Are some useful guiding principles in terms of that thing you mentioned about being too spiritual for the decolonial settings and being too decolonial for spiritual settings? Is it that kind of more of that critiquing these kind of more new age holistic kind of things, more whitewash ones. So what would you say about that? And also, I if I've always been recommended, like people say, for mental health, do yoga, but anytime when I've logged into YouTube or to try to, and I've seen some like when it seems like it's a white person, I've always thought, I'm not sure, but if I know that it's been done by someone who's actually whether they're Buddhist or Hindu or Indian or has some kind of genuine connection to that culture, then I would be more up for doing that. Not to say that obviously a white person can't learn skills, but to me it just seems that they are it just seems like it's coming from a more authentic and genuine place. So I don't know what you feel about that. Those things about how have you the spirituality decolonization and then like getting practices from authentic sources.
Yeah. So go like in terms of practice from authentic sources, I feel the same. I get like I actually feel like quite a visceral reaction, and then I have to almost check myself, like okay, and I think one of the things is around like in general is there a genuine understanding or acknowledgement of the context that it comes back through, and so when I say I do yoga, I've not done that much yet. I've just kind of explored body movement in that way and realized that really connected with me. But I think, yes, I absolutely want to, connect with someone that teaches it. And I think there is, I don't know if you know Seema Anand. She is she's a storyteller and mythologist. She actually talks a lot about tantra meditation and talks about her personally doing yoga. So she's not a yoga teacher, but I suppose going back to the decolonizing and spirituality world, I really use Instagram as my vision board. So I try to make time for reading, but actually a lot of the time I don't I feel like I don't have enough space in my brain, and I sometimes feel overwhelmed. So I have a lot of books that I've not read,
Gotcha.
if I'm really honest. So I find I've got rid of most of my social media, but I do use Instagram as my like vision board. So I do follow her work, and she's this very interesting woman who talks about reconnecting with pleasure, and she's actually rewritten the Kama Sutra for the current day. But she talks about the art of connection between two people. And so it's really interesting. I also really like to read Osho, and when and there's a particular book of his called Tantra, the Supreme Understanding. And when you, as you were saying, you know, yoga isn't just yoga; it's a whole faith and way of being, and I'm not a yoga expert, and I don't know too much about it, but from what I understand, but when I look at and we hear the word tantra, and we have certain assumptions about what it is, being very sexual, but it's not that. It's an existence and a way of being, and there was something really interesting in that I remember reading where Osho basically talked about, like, if we faith okay, hang on, let me see if I can get this right. So there's it's almost like belief and doubt are the same, but they're just opposite polar ends of each other. So when we sit in belief, we're looking for the positivity to reinforce what we think, and when we sit in doubt, we are looking for the negativity to sit with, to reinforce that. So they're actually the same thing. And from a brain perspective, you know, that's constantly on our mind, and it's reinforcing, and we're actually sitting in that space. And what he says is, rather than sitting in both of those spaces, go towards faith. And the way that we do that is deep trusting faith and going towards the love. And what you're actually doing is you're breaking your connection either with the doubt or the belief, and just really surrendering to the fact that it will be, whatever will be, and you and if you already exist in a loving way, you actually go towards the love even more, and so you put more love into that. And so for me, part of my daily ritual is that most days I do free write in the morning, as well as meditate, and I do my decolonizing affirmations. And part of that free write for me personally is I will write every day. I go towards love. I go towards deep trusting faith. And there's something about that in terms of almost, I'm not saying I've got it right, because I have, you know, I get very anxious and I overthink, but I find that really helps to ground me and remind me about you will find a way, and you have it within you. You have that intuition and that knowledge within you, and what works for you in terms of reconnecting to understand that. So I feel like some of that decolonizing is trying to reconnect with you, and by you I mean everything behind you as well. And of course, you know, we have I know that from my perspective, you know, I'm in a very privileged position to be able to know a lot of my understand a lot of my lineage, because I have my family has that knowledge, and that is not the case for a lot of people. So also to acknowledge what a privilege it is to be able to do that as well. So I think, I guess for me, part of this has also been that working with this decolonial healing collective, and I suppose really understanding that it doesn't always have to come from books. And it comes, this very thing that we're doing, that kind of exchange of ideas, and those oral kind of traditions of sharing that knowledge, and then thinking about that, and kind of, I suppose that might be another way of doing it. I'm just trying to think, if you're not part of this group, how would you engage with that? And I think it's for me personally, I have found like following different people on Instagram. So Seema Anand, I follow Habiba Kande as well, and yourself, like lots of different people. I don't know if you follow it. In fact, I think I found that through yourself, like No White Saviors, and so just really a variety of different interesting ideas and people, and sharing that as well. I think is an important part of it. I feel like I've kind of gone off on a bit of a tangent and forgotten your questions.
No, I love it. I mean, I'm here to listen to you. No, I think you. I think you talked about that reaction that you, in terms of. I think the summary is that there's these ideas that we want to get towards, of knowing ourselves better and being in touch with ourselves and our spirituality, and knowing that and we started talking about authentic, so like that these are like tantric yoga, and the fact that there's more to it than just like just being sexual, and that that, for example, yoga comes from a wider kind of belief system, or just wider kind of idea, philosophy, than maybe what people give it credit for. And also that thing of being in spaces like you mentioned the decolonial healing collective, being in spaces that kind of bring out those with you, bring out those ideas, and and the things you mentioned about the affirmation, that's really powerful, that's really beautiful. I know obviously we write and perform sometimes, etc., but that there's something even additionally important about those kind of things that we write just for ourselves, and I think it's with the our habits. I think it's widely said that habits really mold us, don't they? They really shape us. So if you're in a habit of writing that you are worthy, that lean towards love, and that you lean towards faith, and in a positive relation to faith, I think that is a very beautiful thing. That's a very good, beautiful practice, and it really will have a long-term effect. And it's and that writing is it's that proof that you spent the time to focus on this idea, and that and I don't see how that can hurt. It can only help. And I think it's something that I will definitely think about and try to do more. It's I journal from time to time, but those a lot of the it's funny, a lot of the poems, especially the poems I'm writing now, some of them are like trying to look at like Afrofuturism and speculative fiction, but also a lot of them are these more. They're actually a lot of them are affirmations, like I've written one recently, and what the first line of it is, "Please don't live in fear," and that's inspired by a song that I've heard, a Bon Iver song as well, called by the same title, even another, it has another line in there, "Stay alive." Again, that's another song. Mustafa the poet, he had an album recently, and that was one of the songs on there, "Stay Alive." So music, going back to what we talked earlier, being immersing yourself in music, like music really inspires me as well, in terms of because they're presenting the melody and also the lyrics, but some of the lyrics resonate so strongly that it inspires me to actually write a poem based off of that. And then the more I perform these poems, it's like I'm live in doing a live affirmation, to myself. Because when I'm in the construction of it, when I'm by myself, I'm reading it and rewriting it and whatever, and so I'm getting that message there. And then when I'm presenting it, it adds and if it's repeated inside the poem, it is then emphasizing that as well. And I think even just the other day, I had someone responded that one of the lines a poem that I did was "While you're stressing, count your blessings," and they just they responded to it. It really resonated with them. So I think that deliberate practice of going to those affirmations and going towards the love, I think it's beautiful, and it's really it's something I resonate with, and I want to do more of. So definitely. Mm.
And I think the other thing I would say, like especially for people that don't have like a daily ritual or daily habits, is to not try and do everything. So mine, my morning ritual is actually quite long now. But if someone had said that to me right at the beginning, oh my goodness, like there's no way I just wouldn't. And mine started with a 10-minute meditation using an app. That's where it started. 4 years ago, and then slowly over time, there's been other things that I've picked up on and been like, okay, that I like that, or that sounds interesting, and yeah, and so I suppose just trying one thing and seeing how that works and how that feels, and trying it for a while, I think is really key. And so I incorporate some exercise into mine. So I do press ups in the mornings and things, and pull ups, and so yeah, it's really kind of a combination of different things that work for you.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah, no, that's fab. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think, yeah, I think, it might be so cliche, but that going towards the love is so important, and and yeah, it really is, and I think we could spend another hour talking about just. I think it's yeah, it's just so important. It's like it's the most important thing, and I think certain traditions are they're not as emphasized. It's not emphasized as much that that this is an important part of our I feel like I feel like certain people, certain faiths, and this is not just Muslims. This is other faiths as well. It's like okay, more about the like sacrifice, service, and ritual side of things, and then other people and other denominations of the faith, it's more about no, it's only how you feel and ecstasy and that rapturous kind of feeling, and then other people maybe try to have more of a balance in terms of between the outward and the inward,
Mm.
between your rights and your responsibilities, and then again, like I mentioned before, it's balancing that it's that balancing that mind space of being critical. Okay, like okay, what about this is is it equitable? Is it in terms of to to women, to people who might be uh, you know um, it might be more vulnerable and so on and so forth. Is it does it take into account class, race, and so on and so forth? But
Mm.
I say all that to say I as I get older and I started to to think and to really reflect, and yeah, love is very important, very very important, and people want it, people need it, and I think people need it and are looking for it so much that it's part of why people can be kind of sold false things that don't necessarily um work for them, or in again going back to that new age kind of holistic things. People want to feel, we're disconnected from each other. We're in the late stage capitalism. We're for minorities. We're living in, we're not, we're global majorities, but minorities in these lands. So even I think, and especially, and yeah, it's. I think love is very important, and I think people need it. People search for it, anywhere they can. But I think it's important for us to, as people who are like to think and like to reflect, and to as healthy ways as possible as that. What's been useful from what we kind of grew up with. What can we take, what can we leave, and also be assessing critically. The claims of people's claims to this is the only way to be truly saved, or the only way to be truly loved, and really being critical of that. Me, just more specifically, me as I honestly I don't want to. There was a period of my, I mean, in terms of things like decoloniality, patriarchy, etc. So many of these important things, racism, white supremacy. The phrase, even the phrase, I didn't hear until I was until I was well into adulthood. It's some of the most important phrases and ideas and whatever. It's you're just not taught it in this in this system that I grew up with. Like, I couldn't have. But when I was 18, I might not have even heard of the word patriarchy by then. I might not have even heard of the colonization, by then. And I'm legally an adult at that point. So a lot of these things you actually have to be, by having these discussions, but you have to be shown it and taught it. And I think men particularly. I don't know. I can't speak for all men, of course. I can only speak for myself. But I think, I think I want to just prioritizing society prioritizes men's needs, it prioritizes men's needs, and it kind of and it's not good. It's not good for it's not good for women, children, and other people, but it's not good for men as well. I don't think it really, and so I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of how masculinity and love, like how does that like I mean, if you ask what a real man is, you'll know it's someone who dominates and does this and does that and whatever. And if you ask people what a good man is, it's someone who's like maybe generous and loving and kind, etc. And those two seem to be separate things. So and I'm hoping and exploring ways like actually what about masculinity is not to say that men are inherently problematic or anything like that. That I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's true. And I think that attitude will probably make you not want to start looking at how to be better or anything like that. But I think there's so much that needs to be done in terms of needs to be done. And I'm not got the answers or anything like that. I'm just exploring it myself. But in terms of just genuine ways of men to be, spiritual, to be loving to themselves, to be loving to other people, and to really dare the privileges and advantages that they have in society, which is not earned. It's just how it's been, and genuine ways of engaging with that and actually making more loving and kind and happier lives for themselves and for people that are the people that they come in contact with. So yeah, I think I think it's interesting. I think a lot of times marginalized people, oppressed people, they lead the way in terms of like where in the kindness that you talk about this collective, this women's collective, it's often the people who are most victimized by dominant systems that actually kind of come out with the ideas and the thoughts that actually then liberate others. And it's just very interesting to me. I think men have a lot to learn from women, specifically in terms of love and kindness and spirituality. One book that really did help me, that I was able to, one of the ones that I did listen to in lockdown when I was doing your 1 hour walks that you're only allowed to go walk out for 1 hour, etc. One of the books was The Will to Change. The Will to Change, I think, by Bell Hooks. Men, Masculinity, and Love, and it's called The Will to Change. And it's a really amazing book, and it just literally breaks down. Just talks about kind of why basic patriarchy, what it is, why it's really not that. Why it's not great, especially for women, but why it's really not that good for men either, and just talks about all different ways that other potential ideas, and moving towards more of like that holistic that because it demands patriarchy demands that you cut off the emotional side of yourself. It demands that it has it might seem like it has a lot of perks for a male, but it comes with a lot of costs. And she just kind of breaks that down, and it's very accessible. And and examples from her own life story, her relationship with her dad, her granddad, and all these kind of things, and being where they were as well, where they grew up in America, in the South, and how tough her life was there, and how that affected, and obviously the church, and how that affected the dynamics. So it's just really, really interesting, and So. Yeah, I don't know. And now I've gone on a tangent as well. But Yeah, I
No,
really
no,
think,
it's great.
yeah, I really
And you
think
know,
that.
like there's a few things that you talked about there that I'd love to I guess like talk a bit more about. So I
Mm,
think um so one around definitely around masculinity. I'd really like to come back to that. But like so when you were talking about love and then equity as well, I think that is definitely something that I've also been aware of in the language that I use. Because for me personally, going towards the love and existing in a state of love, it does not mean that absolves you of what our responsibilities are as human beings. And so what going towards the love is also about compassion and and making sure that like what are we doing to create an anti-racist society? What are we as citizens doing about that? What are we doing in our circles, in our families, in our friends, and looking at like how anti-blackness exists and all of those things, and that is a part of existing in a loving space, about making sure that we are doing as we should, and shifting those narratives. And I think and I suppose that's where it comes back to that cold thing around new age love, where it actually shuts down lived experiences of different people and different backgrounds and class and race and all of those things. And it's actually really dangerous to kind of to exist in that new age love way without the rest. So I suppose I'd that was something that was in my mind as we were talking, and then actually you kind of really beautifully went on to that when you talked about equity. So I just really wanted to echo my thoughts on that, and I think going back to the masculinity, the point, and so I it's really femininity and masculinity, and that masculine and feminine energy, and our understanding of that is really close to my heart. And so I'm a survivor of domestic abuse, and actually the the way that our patriarchal society exists, and Chimamanda talks about this. I really love the way she talks about this in "We Should All Be Feminists." In that patriarchy holds young girls and women back as much as it cages men, and doesn't allow them to be their full selves, and that full vulnerability and openness to that. And actually, that's something that's really has to, as you say, has to be learnt. And for me personally, like talking about these concepts, like I wasn't in. I think the first time I really started engaging with this understanding of privilege, for example, I was in my early 30s, like, and it wasn't really something that was talked about when I was growing up, or in the world that I was in, like growing up as well. So that it's really really important that making space for our authentic selves and allowing all of us to be able to show up. But before we can do that, we have to go back to learn who and what that could be. And I love JJ Bowler's books, and Masculinity is Unmasked, I think
Yeah,
it's,
I think so.
and his work, and the work that he does around what is masculinity, and actually masculinity is embracing your feminine energy, as well as the things we traditionally think about masculinity, and that vulnerability is such power, about being able to talk about every part of you. And so I think that's something that I'm really personally interested in and passionate about how we create those human connections and make space for all of our authentic selves as men, and or however we identify, actually, not just as men and women, of course. And so I think that is something that I'm also really interested in, and how what that looks like. And I was going to go somewhere else, but my thread has run out.
No, that's fine. No, I think I mean, I think me and you will probably will talk. Obviously, not always on the not in a formal, not in a sort of recorded setting like this. But this is, I think these are things that we're both interested in, and we will definitely, maybe we'll do another one of these in a few months, or maybe maybe we'll just carry on talking offline about it. But yeah, and thanks for obviously sharing thanks for talking a little bit about your experience as well. And yeah, these are things that I'm interested in. I think once your eyes, it's the once your eyes get open to certain things, it's like you kind of feel compelled to, you know, kind of feel compelled to explore it and continue the growth until or to wherever it may lead, really. And that's which is kind of scary, but also exciting because it means that you're always going to be uncomfortable. But then, I'm guessing and I'm hoping, I'm praying that the other side of it is something beautiful and better and more genuine and a more authentic way of being and more loving, hopefully, and to yourself and to the people around you. So yeah, I think these are probably going to be ongoing explorations and discussions. Um, but yeah, so I mean, thanks so much. Thanks so much for talking to me today. Appreciate it. Is there anything that we've missed? Anything that you wanted to plug or promote? I know you think you've got a show coming up. Yeah, is there anything that you wanted to any final?
Yeah. So interestingly, the same day that you contacted me, I also got contacted about doing the first performance in maybe like almost a year. So that's on the 20th of August. The details are on my Brown Gal in the Ring Instagram post. So if anyone would like to come and see some of my work, I would love it if you could join me. But that's on the 20th of August at 7 p.m. and it's an online event. So all are welcome. It's a little Zoom party.
We'll be posting that again close to the time, and this recording today will be available to view before then. So hopefully people from here will be able to move over to there as well. But yeah, that's fab. Keep doing your thing. I always enjoy obviously following your work online. Obviously, even more as speaking to you and spending time holding space for you. So I appreciate that. And yeah, thanks for talking. And we'll speak to you soon.
Amazing. Thank you so much for reaching out.
Yeah,
I love our conversation.
yeah,
So let's chat soon.
yeah. Okay. All right. Take care. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye.